What's up, everybody? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Media Company. Thank you guys for tuning in on this Wednesday morning. Where are we, guys? February, I don't know, 8th or so, guys? 9th? I don't know where we're at, guys. Somewhere in that area. All right, Joe, let's talk edge rushers. You guys can see from the title of the video what we're here to talk about today. And a couple of really interesting names kind of popped up. And I wanted to start off with a storyline that I think is important when you grade defensive ends. It is kind of a unique one, guys, and I love the conversation because of how in-depth it gets. Do you value productions in terms of sacks, or do you value total production in terms of the way a player can move a quarterback off their mark and disrupt the pocket? What I'm talking about, guys, is do we go after George Karlaftis, defensive end Purdue, or Jermaine Johnson II, defensive end Florida State? I think these two players, and there's many players that we can bring into this conversation, but, for the well-known, these two players kind of really bring you into the discussion, guys, about production on sacks versus total productions of moving the quarterback off his mark, off his spot, and how teams will value it. My sneaking suspicion is everyone's going to see it differently in terms of the teams, right? I definitely think that you're going to have elements of some teams that are going to look and say, I don't want to have to go into advanced analytics. I just want to look and see a guy got 14 sacks, Jermaine Johnson, and go after that type of guy. And I think you'll get other teams that are going to be a little deeper into the analytics and go, yeah, I'm a little disappointed that George Karlaftis only really ended with like 5 sacks on the season, but the dude had 54, defensive pressures. When you really look at his numbers, guys, 35 hurries, 14 hits. Quarterback hits, guys, 5 sacks, 54 total pressures. Like, he moved dudes off their mark. He's got an array of skill set here. And then there's just versatility and there's the fit. I love the discussion between these two men because, to me, Jermaine Johnson, he's kind of that joker linebacker, joker defensive end role. Linebacker, guys, joker defensive end role. He's a stand-up guy. So if you really go down his snap breakdowns, you'll see that they really like to move him around a lot between the left defensive end, the right defensive end, and they like to stand him up as a joker. They like to try to move him around to get him disengaged from a team's leading blocker so that way they could fully utilize his athleticism. Then you look at a guy like George Karlaftis, it's a little different, right? Neither one of these guys, I would say, are undersized for a defensive end. I mean, Karlaftis is built a little different, 6'4", 275-ish. But Karlaftis is definitely more of that inside-outside or outside-inside versatility. Let me say that the other way. Outside-inside versatility from a defensive end, right? I hate to say it, but the person that Karlaftis reminds me of is Brandon Graham a little bit. He's very much a technician with his hands and what he can do. He's very much a guy that maybe is never going to get you quite double-digit sacks, but, Brandon Graham hovered around it a couple times. Maybe a guy like Karlaftis finally gets over the hump in terms of that kind of thing and get you, a few seasons with double-digit sacks. But I just think he's going to be overall just a really productive player at the next level. He's going to be a guy that can disrupt your game plan. He's going to be a guy, and I think both of these young men are very good at setting the edge. I think they're very good edge setters. I think both of these guys can definitely set the edge on you and definitely disrupt your running game if you're not careful. It's an interesting conversation, and I don't have the answer in terms of who's the better guy. I mean, that's what the NFL seasons are for, guys. You know what I'm saying? What I will say about Jermaine Johnson is this. When you look at his underlying numbers, Jermaine Johnson's biggest thing here is going to be those 14 sacks he got, right? I mean, you guys heard me say it a few times when I talked about sacks. The one thing about sacks, sorry, guys, my phone was like shutting down on me here. The one thing about sacks is that you don't have to have an in-depth conversation. Like, we know if a guy's getting to the quarterback if there's sacks there. But if you look at the total body of work here with Jermaine Johnson II, I will say that, he's only got a pressure rate of 7.6%. Which is not the greatest in the world, to be quite honest. But he played a ton of snaps, guys, 395 snaps. It's going to bring your pressure rate down a little bit because you're playing a ton of snaps. He's got 25 hurries, 7 hits on the season, 14 sacks for 46 total pressures on the season. So, I mean, when he gets to the quarterback, he finishes the play. I don't know if he's as disruptive as a guy like Karlaftis on a snap-to-snap basis, though. But obviously he can finish the play. And in Philadelphia, this is a unique conversation to have because let's be real. We've got a lot of guys that disrupted plays this year. They got pressure. Pressure wasn't necessarily the issue. We knocked quarterbacks off their spot in terms of hurrying them, hurries. We couldn't complete the play. We couldn't actually get the sack. we didn't really force enough turnovers off of the hurries and the pressures that we were gaining on quarterbacks, which I think has to, that's something that has to happen for Philadelphia in the future. But then, you look at a guy like George Karlaftis and you're getting the opposite. You're getting a really productive guy at 9.4 pressure rate. So 9.4 compared to 7.6, but only 5 sacks. So although he's got this great pressure rate, he only really got home 5 times. 54 total pressures, though, which is pretty high, guys. 35 hurries, 14 quarterback hits, guys. It's an interesting conversation for Philadelphia on what you do here. Do you take the guy that is just disruptive, outside, inside versatility, and George Karlaftis maybe doesn't finish the plays enough? Or do you take the guy who's finishing the plays, in Jermaine Johnson II, but probably isn't going to give you on a snap-by-snap basis as much productivity as a George Karlaftis will? I think it's a fascinating discussion between these two guys. I can't wait till we get to the comments, guys, and I can read some of your comments on these two guys, because I think this is very much just kind of like a who's your preference type thing. Now, I will say this. I'm really curious to see what the Eagles do, because I think there's value in the second and third round of this draft at defensive end. It's really a matter of what you want. Do the Eagles want a situational pass rusher? Because I can think of one guy as a situational pass rusher in this draft class that has phenomenal numbers. Now, let me tell you right now, he's a specialist. He's undersized, and he's a specialist. And that's Oklahoma's Nick Bonitto. My guy's an 11.1 pressure percentage. It's really high, guys. I mean, out of everyone that I graded here today, and it's 15 dudes, he's got the highest pressure percentage. 31 hurries, 10 quarterback hits, 7 sacks, 48 defensive pressures on his snap count. I didn't write down a snap count. My bad, guys, on that one. I do think that Nick Bonitto, to me, is a really good specialist, but that's a limited role. That's a very limited role. You're only going to bring him on very obvious pass rush situations, because at 240 pounds, he'd either have to be useful like kind of in a wide 9 or a 7 technique, or as a joker, stand-up joker, or you'd have to actually physically stand him up, and you'd have to use him as like a Sam. So Nick Bonitto's a guy that does interest me as kind of a utility knife type. You know what he can do. You know he's got this one particular use for him, and it's something I think the Eagles could use, to be quite honest. Some other guys that I thought had some really good underlying numbers here that I think will be there between the second and third rounds. Boye Mafe, I think that's how you say his name, guys. I'm sorry. Minnesota, another one of these guys that I think is your prototypical defensive end, right? 6'3", 6'4", 260, 270. He's going to fall somewhere in between those areas, guys. On the season, he had a 10.2 pressure percentage, which is really good. 26 quarterback hurries, 9 quarterback hits, 7 sacks, and 42 overall pressures. He's a guy that I could see, like I said, I think this is actually a really good draft for these type of players. Some other guys that are a little under the radar here would be like Mayji Sanders, typical Cincinnati defensive, end. I'm not saying he's Trent Cole, guys, but they're all like around 6'3", 255. That seems to be like what they are at Cincinnati, and it's kind of how they get their defensive ends there. He has a 9 pressure percentage on the year, guys. Here's the crazy thing about Mayji Sanders, which, I mean, it completely caught my attention, guys. 54 hurries, 3 hits, 5 sacks, 62 overall, defensive pressures. He's not completing the play, but man, he was definitely knocking dudes off their spot. 54 hurries that's a ridiculous number. As a matter of fact, out of everybody I got graded here, he has the most hurries in this entire class out of these 15 guys. I should probably name the 15 guys. My bad, everybody. So Nick Bonitto, Boye Mafe, I don't know how you say his name, guys. Kingsley Enagbare, the young man from South Carolina. David Ojabo, Drake Jackson, George Karlaftis, Mayji Sanders, Cameron Thomas, Arnold Ebiketie, Jermaine Johnson II, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker, Josh Paschal from Kentucky, and Sam Williams from Ole Miss. All right. If some of you guys have followed me for a while, you know that I just put up a Twitter post, and I kind of alluded to where I was going to take this conversation today. I really like Sam Williams out of Ole Miss. This is a guy that over the past 3 days I've been watching a film on. He is relentless in pursuit. He's not, right now, I would say probably a third-round guy, maybe even fourth round. I'm going to say probably third round. Probably where we're picking, it'd be a third-round valuation. He doesn't have a lot of hype around him, doesn't have a lot of attention on him. He's a prototypical size defensive end, and the dude is just relentless in his pursuit. If you go watch his film, what you'll see a lot of is he'll miss on the initial pass rush, doesn't give up on the play. It comes back around on that second wave of the rush. It takes a quarterback down. I love the young man's relentlessness. I mean, it is there with this young man. What I will say also about Sam Williams is I thought he had really good bend around the corner. I thought he could really bend the edge, actually. Super highly productive in Ole Miss this year. I really liked his underlying numbers, guys. He had an 8.9 pressure percentage. He had 40 hurries, 8 quarterback hits, 13 sacks, and 61 defensive pressures. So my thing is if you're a really, really big fan of a guy like Jermaine Johnson, the Eagles just don't get in position to get a Jermaine Johnson. I think Sam Williams is another guy that's ultra productive, played in the SEC, had 13 sacks, but 61 pressures in total, guys. I mean, he absolutely knocked quarterbacks off their spot and took them down. I'm kind of telling you, man, Sam Williams is like one of my sleepers. I definitely think that Mafe is a sleeper. I think that Mayji Sanders is a bit of a sleeper. And I think Sam Williams might be the better of the unknown guys. Someone that may not be as well known as other people think. And I'm telling you, when I turned his film on, I immediately became a fan of Sam Williams. I was like, I don't know, man. I mean, if the Eagles can find a way of getting this dude on the roster, there's never any guarantees. You can never guarantee a guy's going to have success in the NFL, but I see the underlying talent. I definitely see the underlying talent with Sam Williams. I think he is drastically underrated, and he's not being talked about. He's not being pumped up. I don't know who that young man's agent is, but apparently he needs to get in touch with some of these draft analysts to pump up his draft positioning, because he's certainly better than a lot of guys I've heard mentioned, to be quite honest. Outside of that, the other big name guy that's on this list, fairly big dude, Cameron Thomas, San Diego State, 6'5", 270-pounder, guys. I'm a little worried about the level of competition when you look at San Diego State. But he had crazy production, guys. I mean, look, 77 overall pressures. He had a 9 pressure rating, so 9%, pressure rating. 44 hurries, 21 quarterback hits, and 12 sacks. I mean, he was just destroying quarterbacks that were put in front of him out there at San Diego State. I do get concerned, though, guys, if I'm being honest. I get really concerned about the level of competition he faced. I'm not too sure that that's just like in an immediate translates to the NFL. You know what I mean? Like it's always hard to predict those type of players and predict their kind of production. But I mean, he intrigues me. He's probably a solid second-round pick. I mean, we'd have to see what kind of goes on there. I mean, there's definitely been small school guys who have thrived in the NFL. I don't mean to imply that just because a guy played at a small school and didn't play the greatest level of competition doesn't mean they're an absolute beast. And even if they played Power 5 conferences, would have eaten them up too. I'm not implying that, guys. I'm just saying it's an unknown. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know because I didn't get a chance to see it. The other guy who had really high, ratings, and I said his name, but we didn't go really into it, is Kingsley Enagbare. I think he's a very similar story to like a George Karlaftis, to where crazy numbers, but not sacks. It just didn't convert into sacks. And I like the guy's film. I think that he's a pretty good player, actually, out of South Carolina. He had a 9.9 pressure rating. It's pretty high, guys. 25 hurries, 16 quarterback hits. He was absolutely smashing quarterbacks. The problem is he only got 4 sacks. Turns out to be 45 pressures on the season. I wish we would have seen just a few more sacks on there. If he had 6-7 sacks on his resume, he's probably a surefire, first rounder. I still think that some teams had him at the back end of the first round, but I think right now he's, between him and Jermaine Johnson, I see those guys as like kind of between 20 and like 45 is about where I think their draft value is. Could they go up a little higher than that? Sure. Could they fall a little further than that? Sure. I think it really depends upon teams' approach to the draft because, like I said, I just went 15 deep inside of defensive end. Now, I will say, we all know that there's 3 positions in particular that teams will go on runs for. Tackle, quarterback, edge rushers. Those 3 positions in particular, we know that sometimes there's crazy runs in draft classes over those guys. But because this is a really good wide receiver draft, because I think this is a fairly decent offensive tackle draft. I think the guard play, I do think there's a few guys that are good. I don't know how deep this class is, though, at guard and center, but there's a few dudes that can definitely play that I think have value. I wonder if there's enough to push the board down a little bit on edge rushers. I do wonder that. I'm wondering how far we can slide this board on some of these guys. My Penn State fans out there, I'm an NC State guy. So I didn't really know Ebiketie that well, guys. Arnold Ebiketie. I wasn't really informed to who he was. I will say Ebiketie, crazy production in terms of like defensive, pressures gained. 52 on the year. 8 sacks, solid number, guys. 12 quarterback hits. He got the quarterbacks and hit them and knocked them off their spot 32 times. Seems like he played a lot of snaps because that's 52 pressures and only 8.6 rating with those underlying numbers tells me he must have played a lot of snaps for Penn State. I do think that if like between Ebiketie, Jermaine Johnson, and a few of these guys, I think it's a toss-up. Kingsley and Enagbare, the young man from South Carolina, I think those 3 guys in particular are a bit of a toss-up. I think it's all upon a team's preference. I think they all do a little something different. Like I said, I think Jermaine Johnson's a little bit more the athletic type that you can stand up as a joker and rush and move around. I would look at Enagbare as kind of like this, prototypical 3, basic set, your basic 5 tech on the edge there. So, I mean, Ebiketie, Enagbare, Jermaine Johnson the second. My gut feeling is that it'll be between Ebiketie and Jermaine Johnson as who comes off the board first, and it might depend upon the team's need. But I do think that you got to be careful, right? Because we saw players last season during the draft, we saw guys that went in the back half of the first round that, were not originally thought to be first-round picks. They had second-round grades on them. Some of them really climbed the draft boards late, and there was definitely some speculation that they were going to be like upper second round to mid second round picks. And before that, some of these dudes had third round grades on them. I'm thinking about, I think it was a young man. There's one dude, I think he came out of Houston from last year, class day. He really climbed the boards. I remember him a little bit. Outside of that, guys, I mean, I'll talk about some of your guys' other names I hear mentioned a lot. So Trayvon Walker from Georgia, 5.3 pressure rate, 20 hurries, 9 quarterback hits, 5 sacks, 34 pressures. Trayvon Walker's numbers won't stand out to you, but the thing about Trayvon Walker is the unique way in which they used him, right? I mean, he's not a small guy. Like Trayvon Walker's, is a decently sized dude. He's like, 6'5", 275-ish. I mean, there's some stoutness to him. But it's interesting about how well he was able to drop back in coverage and cover those flats, those curl concepts and stuff like that. I mean, they did some pretty interesting things with him at UGA. And I think sometimes when that happens, it can take away from your pass rush, right? Because you're being able to play so many roles, I think it deprives your pass rush numbers a little bit. I don't really know what to make of Trayvon Walker. I think that right now he's a solid second, third round graded guy. I don't see Trayvon Walker climbing up into the first round, guys. I saw some speculation about that. I mean, like I said, you can never say never. I don't personally see that, but we'll see how it all plays out in the end. Some other guys on here of interest. Let's see who we had talked about yet, guys. Drake Jackson, USC, kind of one of these guys that I'm a little concerned about. I've been burnt so many times by Pac-12 edge rushers that I get a little skeptical when I see them. But I will say the underlying numbers, I mean, the Pac-12 didn't play as many snaps as some of the other guys did. He had a 9.5 pressure rating, 17 hurries, 3 quarterback hits, 6 sacks, and 26 defensive pressures overall. You always got to wonder about the Pac-12, but it is a very pass-dominant league. So, I mean, he had some opportunities to rush the passer. But outside of that, guys, the only other person on this list you may not have heard of before, and I probably haven't talked about quite yet, would be Josh Paschal from Kentucky. Another one of these dudes with good size, 6'3", 275-ish, somewhere in that area, guys. Bigger dude. He had a PRP, so pressure percentage, guys, of 6%, 28 quarterback hurries, 4 quarterback hits, 6 sacks, 38 defensive pressures. Definitely a guy I think that it's floating around there. If you're playing around in the 4th round and a guy like Josh Paschal is still kind of floating around back there, I wouldn't mind picking him up. I don't know if I would be interested in him in really the top 3 rounds. I think it's a little early for him personally, but I put him on here as kind of that last kind of a hold your ground area of like who might go in the top 3 rounds. Guys, I focus on 15 players that I think are probably a very likely chance of going in the top 3 rounds, the first 3 rounds of the draft, if you will. So let's get to some comments, guys. Let's talk a little bit. Let me know what you guys think. Who are the guys you're interested in? I mean, I can give you a little bit of notes of what I got here, and we can talk a little bit. What's up, Blaze Tail? How you doing, buddy? Dave Mart said Jermaine Johnson over Karlaftis all day, every day. JJ was wrecking everybody in the Senior Bowl, and he can win with power. What's up, Joe Castro? How you doing, buddy? What's up, NFC East Beast? He said, good morning, Gates Gorillas. I cut my Bikini Patrol walk short this morning because this is a conversation I need to see. I think Johnson has come into the top 3 edge conversation. You think he's climbed that high? I like Jermaine Johnson. I think he's a good football player. I mean, look, it's a discussion. I get it, but I don't know, man. I still think a lot of guys that have played the line seem to really love Karlaftis, although the sack numbers aren't there. I can't tell you, man. I'd have to get guys like, I'd have to get Caleb to look at some film, get Jalen to look at some film. These are line guys and tell me what it is that's making all these dudes like really, really, shout to the roof about Karlaftis. A lot of dudes that played the line are really high on Karlaftis. Joe follows up and says, I'm going after Karlaftis if he's still there. Bobby said, honestly, I wouldn't take either one. Cree said, good morning, y'all. Have a wonderful, blessed Wednesday. Thank you, Cree. You do the same, buddy. Thank you. Joe said, people getting a bit too hype off Jermaine. I think he's great, but pressures are a sustainable number. Sacks are a product of the defense, just my opinion. Sometimes, yes. I mean, I think it works both ways. Like, you have to be in a position, Joe. You have to be in the right position in order to gain a sack. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it kind of works both ways, but it also speaks to completing the play. Can you complete the play once you get there for the pass rush? But, yes, I would say that there's an argument to be made over what is more valuable. Basically, knocking a quarterback off his mark, having the initial skill set to beat your man and knocking a quarterback off a mark, or sometimes it has to do with the scheme in terms of like, are they layering the pass rush? So think like when they take one edge defender and they run them high and the other one kind of comes around low and then you push the middle, you're layering your pass rush, which would be, more of a scheme based thing. Matt Hatter said, give me the real JJ. Cree said, if the chance comes down to strictly analytics, then the Birds will select Karlaftis. Maybe. I don't think it's just a conversation based solely upon, analytics. I think it's a conversation that's based upon analytics. It's based upon the film study to see where they are as pass rushers, what they can do, where their areas of improvement need to occur. And then I think teams they're going to consider, and they're going to talk about the ceiling. They're going to talk about what the potential is of a player. A lot of times teams do draft on potential. People don't like to hear that, but it's true. Teams really do draft on potential. Good morning, Coach. How you doing, Big Moose? Thank you, buddy. Matt Hatter said, I think they are very similar, but JJ looks like a playmaker. NFC East B says, I see Bonitto as a better Avery. We never figured out how to use Avery. I think we did down the stretch. I mean, I thought Avery played pretty good at NFC East Beast down the stretch. I just don't know if Avery is good enough to keep around on the roster unless it's like a really friendly deal. I just think they're probably going to want an upgrade at Sam. Drew, what's up, buddy? He said this draft is loaded with edge rushers. Between Karlaftis and Jermaine Johnson, I'll take JJ. I like his speed to power more, but Karlaftis is a dog. Takeem said, is Jermaine Johnson the second a top 20 pick in your opinion? I think there's the potential and the possibility that he's a top 20, Takeem. I don't think anything is guaranteed. Joe and I kind of had this discussion actually on Twitter a little bit where, he was saying like, hey, just to clarify my point, I really like Jermaine Johnson. I just don't know that I buy him as being a top 15 pick. And I kind of agreed with him. I don't know that he's a top 15 pick. I think that might be a bit of a stretch. But I do think top 20, possible. It's possible he becomes a top 20 pick. I mean, me personally, I would much rather see guys like, Enagbare and, guys like Ebiketie and Jermaine Johnson the second go between like picks like 25 and like 45. Because I think that's where really their value is as players. I think they're somewhere in between those areas of the late first round to the mid area of the second round. I think it's where their value stands, to be quite honest. But because they're an edge rusher, Takeem, you know what I'm saying? Like, dudes will fall in love and they'll draft high. So I do think it's possible to be top 20. I don't know if it's top 15. That seems very unlikely to me. When you get into the top half of the draft, you're talking about, really 12 to 13 players that are normally difference makers. Herbert said, I'd rather have Johnson because he finishes. Barnett missed a lot of sacks. I want sacks. Give me JJ regarding Sanders. How does he look versus the run? Complex one above all. So Mayji, it's a little complex. I don't think that he's particularly bad against the run, but he's not as good as some of these other guys in the draft class against the run. Takeem said Boye Mafe is a sleeper, late third, early fourth round pick, top 100 prospect. He said, give me JJ. What's up, Big Moose, man? Drew said Sam Williams is a sleeper. Thank you, Drew. I said the same thing, man. The minute I saw his film, I said, oh, huh. Like, this interests me. Like, I'm now really wanting to watch 4, 5, 6 games of this young man because I'm seeing something pop off. I didn't even know anything about this young man because I don't follow the SEC that closely. So the minute I started seeing film of him, I was like, oh, okay, like, this is a relentless pursuer of the football. And the dude's got pretty good bend around the corner. He gets pressure. He gets sacks. I mean, if that dude is a third-round pick, I'm in. Like, go get him. I don't know what we're waiting on. I would go get somebody like that quickly. What's up, Jalen? How you doing, buddy? He said, it's interesting in another way as well. Karlaftis versus Johnson. Instincts versus athleticism, or strength and power versus finesse. Do you think that either one of these guys are – I get what you're saying, Jalen, about finesse. I do see your point because you're not going to see Karlaftis play a whole lot of joker. He's not going to be standing up, moving around the formations. I get what you're saying. Like, giving Jermaine Johnson a free release, it helps him go speed to power. But I don't think he's necessarily, like, lacks strength or anything. But I get what you're saying. Karlaftis is a little bit more of a true, hands in the dirt 5 technique that can play inside as a 3 technique and give you that inside pass rush. I get what you're saying. The difference in the way in which they're utilized is particularly interesting, and how teams will value kind of that longer conversation of, like, do you value traits or do you value the toolbox, a pass rushing toolbox? Matt Hatter said, Coach, who do you think the players are who will jump up in the draft? I think the thing is like, it's hard to say from a scouting perspective who's really jumping in the draft, because what scouts think and what's reported inside of the media can be completely separate things, guys. I want to preface that. But the media narrative, we've already seen it kind of change around Ahmad Garner. Now we see that, the reports are coming in that Ahmad Garner is likely a top 10 pick, right? Earlier on, we thought we would probably have a chance of getting him 15, 16 overall. Now it seems like if you want Ahmad Garner, you're going to have to jump up in the draft to go get him. In the inverse, Stingley at one point was a top 5 pick, but he's been injured. The injuries have hampered his production. The underlying analytics and film aren't as good anymore because of those injuries. So now you're hearing that he might be available between that 12 to 15 pick area. So, like, there are a few guys where you're seeing this kind of thing happen. We're hearing that Jermaine Johnson, did pretty well, but to be honest with you, most of the coverage I heard about the Senior Bowl, I think focused around really Nick Bonitto more than it did Jermaine Johnson. I mean, Jermaine Johnson had a good Senior Bowl, no doubt, but Nick Bonitto was the guy that everyone was kind of raving about from what I heard. I mean, he seemed to have a really good Senior Bowl. One above all said Sam Williams is so violent. If he can ever develop moves, watch out. I do is just completely relentless on film. One above all, he just did not stop bringing the pass rush. He said Mayji Sanders is a 34 outside linebacker, in my opinion. Possibly. I still think you can play him in a 43, Takeem, as a situational pass rusher. I think you can use him as a wide 9 or a 7. I do think he can play 5 technique here and there. I mean, obviously on very obvious running downs, you're not, you can make an argument that he's not going to be that guy. I would say that Nick Bonitto is probably the better fit as a pass rushing linebacker more so than Mayji Sanders is. But I can see that. I can see that with both of them. Drew Smith says Sam Williams is very athletic. Matt Hatter said we should probably take a couple defensive ends this draft. Sam said I'd be more than okay with them double tapping defensive end in the offseason, even if it's 2 rookies, like a first and a third. Takeem said Logan Hall from Houston. That might have been who it is. I can't remember who it was. There was him, and then I can't remember. I'll have to look it up again, Takeem, and I'll get back to you on it. Herbert said, what's your opinion on Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State? Has versatility to play both left and right defensive end? I mean, yeah, I think for edge rushers, they can do either thing. Ebiketie is, I mean, he's a better athlete on film than I thought he would be. He's definitely got the prototypical size you see from the defensive end position. I do think that he was fairly productive against the Big Ten. I know some people have criticized Karlaftis for the level of competition, but it's like, I mean, he played in the Big Ten, man, for Purdue. I mean, I don't know that's a real criticism. It doesn't make sense to me. You know, it's not like the Big Ten doesn't produce NFL caliber offensive linemen. But yeah, I mean, I thought he had pretty good film, to be honest, Herbert. I definitely think that he's a back end of the first round, high second round kind of pick. Matt Hatter said Williams is an extremely athletic 6'4", 265-pound specimen who was once timed at a 4.4 in the 40-yard dash. Man, if he's running that kind of – oh, man, I hope he doesn't run at the combine if he's running that kind of speed, Matt Hatter. He runs that kind of speed at the combine, he's going to climb big time. One above all said Zachary Carter seems like an interesting inside-outside guy from Florida, another guy no one talks about. Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas was one of them, Waylon Simon. Takeem said Jesse Lukita from Penn State. I didn't really watch his film yet. I saw him a few times, Takeem, and I was watching Ebiketie and I was watching Brisker and a few guys. I mean, I definitely saw him here and there, but not enough to really critique and break down his technique and what he's doing. What up, Gate City? If we go defensive end in the first round, I want Ojabo or Jermaine Johnson. Later round sleepers for me is Leo Chanel or Sam Williams. Yeah, I'm a big Sam Williams guy. If that guy's there in the third round, I'd really want him. Cam Thomas, San Diego State, a lot of pressures. Yeah, I mean, a ton of pressures. I mean, to be fair, he had like 62, I want to say. Or no, I'm sorry. Cam Thomas had like 77 pressures overall. It's just, you know, trying to judge the quality of the opponent. You know, it doesn't mean that he can't play at the next level. It doesn't mean he still wouldn't have dominated, you know, Power 5 conferences. But, you know, it's a question mark. It's definitely a question mark. For real, Gate City, the Pac-12 has treated us like trash. Yeah, man, we got burned a few times. Jalen said, Karlaftis is solid, and I see him playing in this league for about 10-plus years, starting in a Pro Bowler or two in there somewhere. Hand placement is good, and he moves very well for his size. Could be J.J. Watt. That's a big praise, man. Smith from Ohio State. What's up, Waylon? I don't know if I said what's up, man. How you doing, buddy? I every now and then I check out your Facebook group because it always pops up on my screen. Philly the podcast. What's up, Joe? He said we got to chop it up soon, bro. Hey, man. Yeah, absolutely. Jalen said Johnson is a coach killer. Johnson has everything physical, but his instincts are not good, and his get off is a bit slow. I did notice that when his hands were in the dirt a little bit. He also looks disinterested at times despite the production. Very tempting pick. Minnesota layers their pass rush well. Do the Eagles? Tough to say, Allie. I think you got to have film to critique that. You know what I mean? I don't have that in front of me right this second. It's something I can definitely put a panel together and look at. We can see if the Eagles, you know, that's a technique. The Saints underneath Dennis Allen were very good at layering their pass rush. I don't know that that's really a Jonathan Gannon thing. He's a little bit more in terms of that kind of that gap and a half idea is what he was trying to implement earlier on in the season. I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, if Jalen or Caleb are in the comment section, if they want to talk about why a gap and a half has runs, you know, starting to become kind of prevalent in the NFL, and you know, if it has potential to be good, and it's just that we didn't have the guys to execute it, I mean, I'll defer to them because they're definitely guys that have a little bit more knowledge about that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I didn't see a ton of layering from us, but I'm sure it happens on occasion. Vincent said, I'm not sure if I like Ojabo more than Arnold Ebiketie. I got to see what they do at Combine. I got a feeling Karlaftis is going to light up Combine and go top 10. Possibly. Takeem said, defensive lineman Zachary Carter from Florida. NFCSB said there will probably be 4 defensive ends or edges gone before pick 15. Stinks for us. Maybe. I don't feel that's going to happen, NFC East Beast, but I don't think you're crazy for suggesting it either, just because of how valued edge rushers are. You know what I mean? Now, the good news is that we really still need guys on the back end of the defense. So if 4 edge rushers goes, it means somebody's getting slid down the board between linebackers, and corners. Somebody's going to get slid down the board. What's up, Messiah? How you doing, man? Vincent said, yeah, Johnson actually said at the Senior Bowl he wasn't initially listening to the coaches. Yeah, off my board. What's up, Shonuff? How you doing, man? Darion Beavers. What's up, Hurt Swag Call from Cincinnati? Akeem, what's good, man? He said, if Hallie gets this draft wrong, we're done for the next 5 to 10 years. Best pick, talent available. Best talent available pick. NFC East B said, can you do a film study on Williams? Quantify which teams, tackles, double teams, run defense. Are you talking about our Williams on the team right now? Are you talking about Sam Williams? Which Williams? NFC East B. I think yeah, someone was commenting below you. Like, are you talking Milton Williams or Sam Williams? Let me know which one you want. I mean, we could talk about both, honestly. I think both are worth a look because they're both going to play a pretty big part. Red Eagle said Milton Williams will make a big jump in his second year. So I think Gannon wants guys who can drop into coverage. Jalen said on film, Johnson gets swallowed up by blocks often. I'm not saying he isn't strong, but understand you're not going to bring your hard hat, but your dancing shoes. JJ's long arms oversitting to set the edge. Akeem says, as much as I like Devin Lloyd, Philly needs a thumper like Nakobe Dean. No more coverage linebackers. They're both kind of coverage linebackers, though, Akeem, although Nakobe Dean can pass rush. They're both, I would call them both all-around linebackers. They can, both of them can pass rush. Both of them can drop into coverage. And both of them actually play the run fairly well. You said, oh, you're talking about Sam Williams? Yeah, I think it would be an interesting video, to be honest, NFC East Beast, because his bend was a lot better than I thought it would be. He's a guy that, I wasn't anticipating being that hyped about once I saw the film. And I was like, wow, like, you know what? Like, there's something to this young man. The athleticism is clearly there. You can see it on film. He's very relentless in his pass rush pursuit. I don't know what I would say in terms of like the pass rush moves, like how many tools are inside that toolbox. I don't know personally. I can't really say. That's a really difficult conversation to have. I don't know. With that said, when a guy doesn't give up on a play, the dude has the underlying, prerequisite of the athleticism. And then you see on top of that the young man can really, he can bend the corner. He can bend the edges. I mean, yeah, it could be interesting, man. That could be a really interesting one. NFC's B said teams played against. You want a breakdown of like where his production came from, basically? Caleb said Johnson's get off ain't there enough for me constantly. I could need to see more or wrong, but I don't consistently see that fire out a cannon. You got to remember, though, Caleb, the only thing I'd push back a little bit on that is how many snaps he played and the fact that he got moved around a lot. I do agree with you that his get off is slow. I definitely thought when he had his hands in the dirt, there were a few times that, like, I don't know what he was doing or what he was watching. It didn't seem like he was really watching the snap because it seemed like he was almost a tenth of a second late on that snap a few times. With that said, I mean, they moved him around a lot, stood him up. I mean, they pretty much played him everywhere. I mean, he's definitely a guy that they were trying to free up to get a pass rush from. I also wonder about the rest of that FSU defense, man, Caleb. That rest of the FSU defense was pretty bad. It really wasn't very good at all. Now, I will say that I don't think that he's the only pass rusher there. I think they had a couple of guys that actually can pass rush. But they definitely fell flat when he left the game. What's up, Antonio? How you doing, man? Yeah, no, I mean, you don't. So, Caleb, when you say fire out of the cannon, I don't see the same that I saw from, like, Sam Williams. Like, Sam Williams' athleticism, it popped out on you on film. Like, you saw immediately that guy was just absolutely destroying people. I mean, he was, I mean, whew, man, what I saw on film from him was quite impressive, man. It was just a relentless pursuit of the quarterback. The way he bent the edge was, I mean, reminiscent of I hate to say it, reminiscent of how Derek Barnett has the ability to bend the edge. Not that I'm calling him Derek Barnett, guys. That's not a fair comparison. But Derek Barnett was really, really good at bending the edge. And this young man seems to have that same exact ability to be able to do that, where he bends the edge really, really good. Jalen said, Allie, we didn't layer a pass rush that well last year. The type of defense we run neutered Barnett from bending the edge. His problem is getting off, and we forced everyone to read. Yeah, see, I don't know if Jaleb and Caleb, if you guys can provide insight to why, like, what is it about Gannon's system that runs gap and a half? Because I never really looked at Eberflus's system like that. I don't think that maybe they did. I mean, I didn't think Zimmer ran gap and a half, but maybe I missed it. It's possible I kind of missed what Zimmer was doing out there in Minnesota, and they were running gap and a half. That's very possible, but that seems like an Eberflus influence to me. I don't know, guys. I mean, it definitely there's definitely a delay to the way Gannon plays the defensive line. You know, it seems like instead of Jim Johnson's theory of kind of like play the run on the way to the quarterback, his is honestly kind of the opposite. Like, hold your gap for a second, then pursue the pass rush. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you have good enough guys to win the pass rush, sure, I could see it working. But I wonder your guys' opinion if you're playing gap and a half, and then you're also backing off your coverage inside of a zone system, to where, you know, he tightened it up at the end of the season, guys. But, you know, there was a period of time during the season to where the cushion we were affording receivers was quite strong. It was quite large. And on top of that cushion we were affording to receivers, we were running gap and a half. And it was like, to me, it just seemed like a really bad mesh of things. Like, I didn't understand what he was trying to accomplish by doing that. But, you know, that's something that, you know, I'd love to have the coaches actually speak on it and hear them like, okay, why were we playing gap and a half with this very soft zone shell coverage that we were running out there? I would honestly love Gannon to break down what he was thinking, what he was trying to accomplish there by doing that, and then ask him straightforward, do you think like you made a mistake in terms of not mirroring or not complementing your coverage to your pass rush? But yeah, man, it's definitely it's definitely a question to think about. Caleb said, I see somebody with a slow get off. I'm thinking pancake. I've seen people with not the best get off get great, you know, be great technicians. You have to be especially on that level. Let your get off the ball slow on. Oh yeah, I got you. You're saying a guy like Dickerson would eat you for lunch, basically, if your get off is slow. Yeah, I could see that a physical guy like that. I think there's concerns about the next level. I agree. I think his concerns at the next level are true, and I think they're apparent. That I do think that there's a little hesitation. Like I said, guys, I thought that the hesitation wasn't as drastic when they had him in a joker role, but when he had his hands in the dirt, I did see a few times that he came off the line a little slow, to be honest. They never admit to making mistakes. Yeah, I mean, it's not really about admitting to making mistakes. I wouldn't try to trap them into that type of conversation because, you know, obviously then they're not going to admit it, you know, and it's going to get confrontational if you do that. I would probably try to fish around them to say, like, hey, like, you know how they do the film studies? I would ask them outright, like, hey, it looks like to me as if we're running gap and a half here. Why is our coverage, like, you know, what's the rationale or the reasoning why we play, you know, this defender 6 yards off when we're running gap and a half? Like, I mean, I would ask them straightforward. Did we play 2 gap and gap and a half because of our linebackers? Possible. It's possible, NFC's beast. I thought that our linebacker play got a lot better once Davion Taylor and TJ Edwards got into the game. But there was definitely periods of time to where those guys were standing like their feet were in concrete. And they were waiting basically until the lineman climbed the second level to even try to initiate or engage contact. Now, like I said, I had asked Jalen if he thought maybe that was something that was taught through the scheme. Is that some kind of gap responsibility thing to why they're just standing with their feet in concrete and not engaging to get a guy off of your interior D lineman? Jalen said that he doesn't necessarily know. He can't really say for sure what's being taught, but he wouldn't know of any other system that was similar to that. I don't know what was happening with Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson, but those guys early in the year, I mean, it was like their feet were stuck in quicksand. I mean, the offensive line, but they weren't even moving until the offensive line reached the second level. I mean, it was ridiculous, our run defense early in the season. Jalen said what he said. Caleb said he's still a great football player. I know I seem harsh sometimes, but the truth is he ain't the quickest off the ball. He has to have great technique, more specifically great hands to keep them guys off you. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I get what you're saying. You're not saying that he will or won't be successful at the league. You're saying that right now, if he gets to the NFL level, you're a little concerned that if he's that, if he's a tenth of a second behind that snap consistently, guys are going to get up on him. And he's going to have really good hand placement. He's going to have a really good arsenal of pass rush moves. He's going to have to be a technician to win that. I get what you're saying, Caleb. I understand completely what you're saying about him. And I agree with you. I mean, I think if you watch a guy like Sam Williams, who's another guy who's to me, from watching the films, he looks like he's an incredible athlete. I don't remember who it was, but someone earlier said that he had a 4.440 at one point recorded. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, guys, but I believe the person, who's saying it, that they've seen an article saying that. If you look at his film and you look at what Sam Williams can do, I mean, that dude does not lack the get off the football. I mean, I agree with you there. If you put them side by side, you'll see a little difference there. I definitely agree with that perspective of it. A lot of people, let me ask you two a question, guys. A lot of people in NFC's Beast, I know you're a line guy as well. A lot of people say that George Karlaftis' get off isn't good enough for the league. They say the same thing. It's just that he's a technician and he wins with solid hand placement. And he's pretty good. He's got a good arsenal of pass rush moves. I know, Jalen, you feel like that George Karlaftis could be a 10-plus, year player in the league and, a couple Pro Bowls possibly. He could be that type of caliber of player. Do you think that he'll be a solid contributor from the start? Or do you think, much like Brandon Graham, he might have an initial slow start? Or do you think – see, here's the thing about these discussions. And, as you guys are kind of come up with what you guys think here. Do you think it was just that Brandon Graham was a particular type of athlete that maybe the league wasn't ready to quite utilize their skill set yet? And then eventually the players' knowledge over, technique and things caught up to their abilities, which then caught up to the league. So now you get guys like George Karlaftis, and there won't be that initial lagging in production. I don't know. I do wonder if Karlaftis is going to be super productive in the league right from the jump, because I do think you guys are right, man. I think he's a solid technician. I definitely think he sets defenders up well. I don't understand the criticism, like I said, of the level of competition, but I'll have to go in and look. Maybe he fed off some bad competition. I'm not really sure, but I mean, I thought the level of competition overall was pretty good. NFC's B said Karlaftis top 3 conversation, in my opinion. Yeah, you and Jalen, you guys are really high on Karlaftis. And you guys aren't crazy. You're not the only line people I've heard talk about him. A lot of line people are really, really high on George Karlaftis. Like I said, guys, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I understand the technique argument. I definitely see it on film as well that he's very, very good. He's got that versatility of being that outside inside pass rusher. I think, he's a guy that if you love Brandon Graham, you love the way Brandon Graham, plays the game and sets the edge. Although I will say Aiden Hutchinson, I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch Aiden Hutchinson film setting the edge, but man, that dude's pretty impressive at times doing that. I think George Karlaftis is kind of that next guy that has the frame, has that versatility of outside, inside. I don't know, man. It's hard to say, guys. Caleb said, I agree completely, but K uses his hands better and more violent with his hands. K is a stud. I think he's fundamentally better than Johnson. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's a question, Caleb. I think that's 100% accurate. When K comes off the edge, he has a purpose. Yeah, no, Caleb, I think you're 100% accurate there. I don't mean to insinuate that I think that Jermaine Johnson is a better technician right now. No, I wouldn't agree with that statement. Of course, I would say Karlaftis is clearly better at the inner battle that happens along the line. Now, what I haven't had a chance to do yet, guys, and I haven't had a chance to really break down, we're talking about the slow get off of Jermaine Johnson and the fact that this isn't a lack of natural athletic ability. It seems to either be something's going on with not really paying attention to the snap or some kind of delay there while the get off is being slow, or, what is the other issue here? Have you guys had a chance to really look at his hip placement, the way he engages into blocks? The way he goes after linemen. I mean, I haven't really had a chance to see that. I don't see a ton of – what I didn't see him doing a lot is they'll loop him. I saw a lot of looping. They'll use him as a looper and a stunt. But I didn't see him playing a lot on the inside. So, inside I think is a little easier to grade that hip placement and just kind of see the fluidity of the player's hips and see the way that they're gaining leverage as a defender, as a defensive lineman. I think it's a little harder to see that on the edge. I also think that the way that you use your hips on the edge is a little different from the interior. But I'd be curious to see what you guys think. I mean, I know that's a pretty big question, guys, and I know that you probably – like Gate, I haven't looked that deep into it yet, but I'm curious of where he ranks there. Oh, yeah, I got you, NSCDs. I know you meant top 3 defensive end. I know you weren't saying top 3 draft pick. I got you, bro. He said, I think Karlaftis, the Eagles better while JJ fits a team like Minnesota. I don't know who's in Minnesota now, though. I have no clues in Minnesota any longer. He said maybe coaching or something. I've seen coaches coach players into better get-offs and firing off the ball. Maybe it's there, just wasn't coached. We will see, but if you end or 3, I want to see that pop. So if you're a 5 tech or a 3 tech, you want to see the pop off the line of scrimmage. I got you. Yeah, that's interesting, Caleb. I don't really know the defensive line coach on Florida State. I don't know who it is, so I can't really weigh in on that. I used to know their coaching staff pretty well, but I haven't really followed Florida State in a while, so I'm not really sure who their defensive line coach is. It's interesting perspective. It's true. What's up, Ted? How you doing, buddy? He said, good morning, coach. Who has the higher motor between the two? Ooh, the motor argument. Man, it's tough to say. I'll say this. It's really hard to judge motor, but I think Karlaftis, because of the outside-inside versatility, the underlying production of, gathering 54 pressures overall in the season, he only got 5 sacks. I definitely think that there's, I think that there's a little bit more into what he does on a snap-to-snap basis. Here's the thing is I don't want to come across as I'm saying that Jermaine Johnson lacks a motor. That's not what I'm saying. I do think that there's an argument between what guys are good at setting the edge. Like I had a Twitter debate with somebody that I'm going to have on the channel and I'm going to talk with, but I do think that there's an inner debate between what constitutes setting the edge and who's good at setting the edge versus backside pressure, backside pursuit, and cutting things off. I don't want to judge it based upon 4 games and say a guy doesn't have backside, pursuit, but I will say that I didn't see the plays being made from behind the way that I saw. Like, I hate to keep going back to this player, but Sam Williams chased a lot of guys down from behind on that backside pursuit. So I do think that Jermaine Johnson is particularly, I thought he was pretty good on film at setting the edge. Some things when it comes to edge setting are really difficult to talk about, guys, because when you set an edge, you have to know the assignment, right? So if I'm going to critique or criticize his backside pursuit, I need to understand what's being coached by Florida State. Because think about Jannard Avery and how many times when he was supposed to set the edge, he got caught backside pursuing. The play comes back on the reverse side, and now he's outside of his assigned area. Think back to that Miami game in 2019. And then now we're getting, 15, 20-yard runs put on us. I definitely think that there's some things you have to kind of measure with that type of stuff, but I see why people are criticizing the backside pursuit. Herbert said he thinks Johnson's ceiling is higher than Karlaftis. He's suited for the Joker role. Johnson, great at shedding blocks, making plays. You think Karlaftis' motor is higher? I think there's definitely an argument to say that Karlaftis' motor is higher. I definitely – see, here's the thing, though, like, Herbert, do you think that it's that – this is where I struggle with this particular comparison, Herbert. Do you think it's that – trying to think how to phrase this, guys. I'm sorry. Do you think that Jermaine Johnson's ceiling is higher than Karlaftis, or do you think that it's more so that Karlaftis is already so sound that the growth you're going to get from college to the NFL it doesn't have as much to gain as like, Jermaine Johnson, who has a ton of growth that can still, be developed there. He still needs work on his pass rush move. I still think that his hand placement's not great at times. I definitely, think that he does release slow when he's got his hands in the dirt. I think he does release slow off the line of scrimmage. I think that is very true. I don't know that, that's our part when you're judging ceiling when it comes to edge rushers. I don't necessarily know that it's higher. I just think there's more room to grow from where he is currently to where he could, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't know if you're looking at both of those guys, if they reach their full potential that, I mean, I guess you can go with like, well, Karlaftis is not quite the same athlete. So if you get Jermaine Johnson to that potential area that he could be, Karlaftis is never going to be that type of athlete. But I'm also kind of waiting to see the testing numbers, guys, because sometimes there's guys that have really great straight ahead speed, but that's not always the best indicator of like actual like athleticism and speed on a football field. Sometimes it's really the lateral movements and how they test on the lateral movements that matters more. So I'm kind of curious to see how Karlaftis and some of these dudes test at the combine when it comes to those lateral movements. Vincent said Karlaftis has a way higher motor. In fact, he said, I would say that it's a legendary motor. The Washington commies, that's funny, man. Going after Russell Wilson rumor. Let's hope not. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to actually go after him, man. It's hard to say. I mean, possibly. I think Russ did make a statement saying that, at least I heard it. I don't know if Russ made the statement or somebody in Russ's camp released a statement, but said that he'd be willing to play there. I mean, I still don't think they have the greatest weapons there. I mean, I think they got a few guys that can play. Terry McLaurin's no slouch. I still don't think that receiving core is complete. Jalen said that Jermaine Johnson reminds him a little bit of Clowney and how they play their game in terms of taking on blocks and pass rush. JJ has potential, and every coach is saying I can teach him X, Y, and Z. Vincent said Karlaftis could be similar to Watt or Max Crosby because he's so athletic for his size. See, that's what I'm interested to see, Vincent, is what does he test at the combine? What are his lateral movements? I like the Max Crosby cross reference, right? Because it is kind of hard to say that someone's going to be similar to Watt or like those type of players, but I do like the Max Crosby comparison. NFC's B said if either is there, the Eagles should seriously consider taking them at 15 and 16. Jalen said he thinks Sam Williams and Peyton Turner are similar from an effort standpoint. Yeah, Peyton Turner definitely had. I think that's what I was thinking of earlier too. By the way, Jalen, Peyton Turner definitely has that relentless pursuit aspect to him, and people fell in love with that on film. Vincent said, "Yeah, the 3-cone drill is more important than the 40." I actually think Karlaftis is going to test really well. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make any predictions because I really don't know, but I definitely think it's a possibility, Vincent, that he does come across and test very, very well. Comes out and grades some stuff out really high. Herbert said Johnson can get better. I think Karlaftis might be a finished product. With a more athletic guy, you can teach technique. Caleb said Crosby and Watt is very different. Also, did you get a chance to see Matt Hennessy versus Linderbaum? A little bit. I've watched a little bit of it. Not enough to really weigh in on it, but I will say from the little bit I saw, speaking of getting off slow off the ball, yeah, Hennessy was faster off the snap. There's no doubt about it. Hennessy was a lot faster off that snap than Linderbaum was, but yeah, interesting discussion, Jalen. I definitely think that's a really, really interesting discussion. I got you, Caleb. I know what you meant, man. Antonio said, I mean, Eagle fans don't want Russell, so why are we worried about where he is going? I mean, I guess they're looking at it from the division opponent perspective in terms of, does he provide them a spark? And, with the Giants coaching staff, some guys are fearful of the Giants coaching staff because they got Wink Martindale at defensive coordinator and, Brian Daboll is the offensive coordinator. I still think they got a ways to go. You got to see how Brandon Brown does in their front office as the assistant GM there. on paper, that coaching staff and front office looks good for the Giants. But, we'll see how it works out. I was pretty high on Brandon Brown, if I'm going to be honest. I'll say that right from the jump that I was very, very high on him. Jalen, Caleb, all you guys in here that, NFC's beast, Antonio. What did you guys think of Ebiketie? What are your thoughts on Ebiketie from Penn State? Because I thought that here's the thing, man, is I don't know what's going to persuade guys. I don't want to get too crazy. I don't want to get too crazy on what's going to persuade people. But, I thought Ebiketie, if you watch the film, I don't think his get off was quite as slow as what I saw from Johnson and as a 5-tech. Now, Johnson gives you a lot of versatility. You can stand him as a joker. They moved him all over the place. He's definitely athletic. I'm curious who goes first between Ebiketie and Johnson. Now, I know you can say, Gate, come on, man. It depends upon the team. Team, system, scheme. You can't act like those things, don't exist and we're in some kind of vacuum where those things aren't there. I get it, guys. But I'm just wondering. I'm curious who goes first out of those two players, Ebiketie and Jermaine Johnson. I think sometimes on a computer or phone, Gate City Sports has a hard time reading comments, but he does his best. I do my best. Yeah, I'm on a phone right now, Blaze. The print small. Jalen Williams said, who? Ebiketie from Penn State. Arnold Ebiketie. Antonio said they hired Wink. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing they hired Wink Martindale. What's up, Brian? I'm doing well, man. I hope you are too. NFC's B says I haven't had an opportunity to watch them yet. Vincent said, isn't Johnson 2 years older than Karlaftis? And Karlaftis just started playing football a couple of years ago. I don't know about that, Vincent. I'm not really sure. I'm not saying you're wrong. I honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not too sure if he's 2 years older than him or not. He did come from a community college. From that community college, he played at UGA, and from UGA, he transferred to Florida State. So, it's possible that he's significantly older, but I'm not sure, man. I'm not really sure. Antonio said, I like him. I had him ahead of Johnson. I may still have him before Johnson. Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation between those two players, what teams value what guy and how they kind of shape that discussion and who actually comes off the board. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation. Jalen said, give me 5 minutes. All right, man, no problem. NFC's B said, I like the offensive lineman from Boston College, Zion. Yeah, very versatile guy. He was very good in the run game, man. He's a good run blocker. He was taking some after practice snaps at center. They do that a lot, though, at the Senior Bowl. They like to mix guys up, and, they'll make tackles play inside at guard. They'll make guards play at center. I don't want to say that I've watched enough of the Senior Bowl yet, NFC's beast, to weigh on how he performed at center. I don't even know how many snaps he took there, but I'm going to definitely go back and watch the offensive line drills and watch some of those one-on-ones and then watch the 11-on-11 again. And I want to see how he played. I will say the offensive line, man, I really wish we could have got better talent at tackle. There's a lot of good tackles in this draft class. I don't think that we had the best representatives at tackle for that. And I think it caused the quarterback play to suffer a little bit. Do you have Arnold Ebiketie going in the first? I have him going. Look, could he go in the first? I believe so, one above all. I still think that I see those guys as ideally between picks 25 and 45, somewhere in terms of the back part of the first round into the middle part of the second round. I would love to get either one of those type of players at 51, but you know how teams are with edge rushers, man. Teams value edge rushers and they'll overdraft for an edge rusher. He said, great, thanks. I'd be better if we somehow got my guy JJ. I think it's possible. Especially the real question about JJ is, and this is what Joe and I were talking about, Joe Castro and I. We were talking about where his value is. And, Joe said, he's look, I'm not saying he's not a good player. He's I don't know that's a top 15 pick. I was I kind of agree. I don't know he's a top 15 pick either. I think it's very debatable. Top 20, possibly. I could see it at 19. I still think that if you can get the Eagles to trade back on that 19th pick to get to back end of the first round or into the early second round to where there'll be still all these pass rushers, you're going to end up with, Enagbare should still be there. You got, guys like potentially Ebiketie could still be there. Jermaine Johnson could technically be there depending on where you land. Trayvon Walker could technically be there depending on where you land. Then you can look at like pick 51 and you look at guys like Boye Mafe from Minnesota. He might be available in that, that kind of slot, that kind of pick area. Mayji Sanders, if you're a big fan of him. Cameron Thomas will probably come into play between pick 25 and 45. I think if you can get back a little bit, you're going to gain, positioning draft picks and then maybe set yourself up to where you're going to probably get the same player you were going to get anyways, or the same caliber player you were going to get anyways, and then also gain a pick. I mean, that's what I would want them to do, but, it takes two to trade. It takes two to tango, it takes two to trade, You got to have an interested party that wants to come up. And, I mean, what are the positions commonly traded for? Normally, you're going to see a guy trade for a quarterback or maybe a tackle. I mean, I've seen some guys jump for, corners and stuff like that, but I don't know, man. I mean, we need a corner ourselves. So I know a lot of you guys are like, I don't know about that, Gate. We don't need to be sliding, we don't need to be moving back and allowing corners to come off the board. I hear you. But, I mean, definitely if we're looking at, pick 15, pick 16, I'm not too sure we're going to keep both those picks, guys. I got a feeling that we're either going to package, two of those and try to move forward, or we're going to take one of those two between pick 15 and 16 and potentially trade it out. But I guess you could make the theory, like, what's the difference between that and 19? They could do the same thing with 19. Are they going to leverage, man? Are they going to leverage for next year? That's really the question. Like, we talked about this in the last live stream. There's two ways of approaching this. You can look at this from two set of viewpoints. On one hand, Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles organization can burn the ships and go all in on their chips with Jalen Hurts and with this defense, right? Burn the ships, get forward in this draft and go get a guy that you think is a potential playmaker and then not have that leverage the following year. And then the other part is you can hedge your bet, which means we still got a lot of picks inside of the top 100. We can easily take one of those picks if there's a willing trade partner and trade back into the 2023 draft and then hedge our bet at the quarterback position just in case it doesn't work out. So that way we have enough ammo or arsenal to either go get a veteran guy or to play this again next year in terms of the quarterback market. It'd be interesting to see what they do, guys. I'm not really sure what they're going to do personally. Herbert said, I loved AK from Penn State. I had him slightly ahead of David Abojo. Is that how you say his name? Hang on, guys. Did I just messed it? Yeah, Ojabo. I was like, that didn't sound right. In a vacuum, I'd take him over Johnson, Karlaftis, and Ojabo. Was a sleeper. Looks like everyone has caught up. Antonio said, I have Arnold going in the late first. Then the Senior Bowl, Johnson did really well, but the film is the film. Like Barkley said, the eye in the sky don't lie. Kale said, you like Arnold, but I want somebody bigger. I want a big body pass rusher. Cameron Jordan type. I know that's rare, but that's what I think we need. I'm trying to think if there's anyone on this board that would be that type of pass rusher. I mean, you could look at Cameron Thomas. He's a big body guy. I don't know Ebiketie's exact measurements, guys. Trayvon Walker's a big guy. Josh Paschal from Kentucky's a pretty big dude. Sam Williams isn't a small guy, but I don't think he's a Cameron Jordan type. That's interesting, Caleb. I don't know, man. I'd have to really look at film with an eye towards what I think Cameron Jordan is and then see if anyone I think even remotely is close to that. I think NFC East Beast kind of has a good suggestion there. Oh my, how Leo has fell. The tweener gets no love. Well, I mean, to Caleb's point, I see where now they're projecting that Leo might be he might play some 5-tech. He might play outside as a defensive end at the next level. If that were to happen, I mean, that would fit your Cameron Jordan type body frame. I'm not talking about the player and the production, but the body frame would certainly fit there. Said, I got you, man. Don't worry. Caleb said a big body defensive end, not outside linebacker or stand-up end. I went a true defensive end, a 6'4", 275 plus guy. Caleb said, I love Leal. I want Leal. Yeah, I struggled. So I'm going to break down Devin Leal when I get to defensive tackles. I struggled trying to place what I wanted to do with Devin Leal because there is a dominant theory coming out now where people are saying that he's probably better suited to the NFL to play outside as a pass rusher. And, then had that versatility to bounce inside as an interior pass rusher from, down to down. I don't know, man. I mean, I thought his film in 2020 was pretty good. This year, probably a little hit or miss. I know that scouts really got down on his production this season, but I definitely think he's still talented, man. I don't think that you lose the talent that made you at one point a top 12 pick that just drops you all the way down to like the bottom of the second round. Like either the guy possesses the talent or he doesn't. You know what I mean? Like I definitely think we can talk about consistency. I think that's fair, but I don't know, man. I mean, yes, if Leal's there in the second round, guys, I don't hate that pick at all. Antonio said, I love Leal. And did tell him lose 10 pounds, and we have him at 280, 285. So you would play him at end as well. So, Caleb, do you think that he was like, so Milton Williams, so let's go into Milton Williams because we were talking about Milton Williams when we confused the question about Sam Williams. Milton started out as a defensive end at Louisiana Tech. And it was only because of, a lack of scholarships and, players opting out because of C-19 that, he kind of got asked if he would bounce inside and play on the interior. I mean, do you think a guy, are you looking at Leal and thinking to yourself like, man, if you got a guy like Leal, then you got Milton Williams, you got a veteran like Brandon Graham, you know what I mean? Like, I don't hate it, man. I mean, if you can truly be versatile, and that was the problem I had with Karlaftis is like, I got Milton Williams, I got Brandon Graham, and I got Karlaftis. So I got these three guys that are outside, inside, outside versatility. Is this coaching staff going to be creative enough to use them? Or are we just going to be depriving each other of snaps here? Or are we going to be taking away snaps from each other? I guess that's really my fear there. But, man, I mean, definitely, like, can you imagine the versatility you would have on the defensive line with Leal, Milton Williams, Brandon Graham, as the veteran guy? I mean, it's definitely intriguing. I mean, then imagine if you could circle back in the draft and get a guy like Sam Williams as an upside player. Yeah, I mean, definitely, man. Herbert said, I think the Eagles have that if they want to flex Milton Williams as a big defensive end. I think if they let him out there, he'd be fine. Yeah, I agree. And he started playing defensive end a lot down the stretch. I thought they were going to make him a 5-tech, but because of the lack of depth we have at the interior, Herbert, I'm not too sure that's where they're going to go. See, my thing is when I saw Milton Williams, I saw him more as a bigger bodied, kind of like we're discussing with Leal, but like a Brandon Graham type, outside, inside versatility. But the Eagles saw him more like, to me, it looks like they saw more like Malik Jackson, an inside interior, pass rusher that has the requisite athleticism to play outside as a 5-tech. I don't know why they see it that way, but it's what it seems like to me, Herbert, is the way that they see it. Antonio said he can play every position on the line. Watched him all year, started strong, faded late. Leal, I must see his athleticism more, but none of the people have to carry the weight like that and move him. I agree with you, though, Steve. The versatility would be crazy. Yeah, that's what would intrigue me is if you could get the versatility out of players of like Leal and then Milton Williams and Brandon Graham, and then I'm talking dream scenario, guys. I'm not advocating this is going to happen. But then imagine you circle back and you get a guy like a Sam Williams, that type of athlete. So now you got Brandon Graham as a veteran. You got Milton Williams, who's got special, pass rush abilities. You got Leal, who's a nightmare at times in terms of matching up with him on the defensive line and that versatility. And then you got the pure athleticism of a Josh Sweat and a Sam Williams. It would be intriguing. Then you even got guys, like, look, Teron Jackson's no slouch, man. I really liked what Teron Jackson did. I mean, I think you'd have a pretty solid, group of versatile football players. NFC East B said the combine would tell us so much more about all these guys. how many quarterbacks before 15? Anywhere between 0 to 3. Let's pray for 3 or Howie. Yeah. Caleb said Milton's a stud. That's fair, Caleb. That's a fair point. Caleb's saying that he believes they see it that way because the athleticism of Milton Williams would be harder for a guard to handle on a pass rushing situation than an offensive tackle. I can see that. I mean, I'll ask you, and I know that we probably should pull film up of them and look at it, and maybe we can set that up, guys. If you and Jalen want to do that in the future, pull up some Milton Williams film and let's take a look at what he's done on the season in terms of the pass rush. What do you think about his speed to power move on the outside? Did you see it at all? Do you think he's particularly good at going speed to power on the outside? I didn't really trace that. I didn't really think about it until right this second, to be honest. But I definitely think that's something to kind of mirror and look for from the All-22 and just kind of see, like, how did he do speed to power on the outside? He's definitely got a really good initial pass rush move on the interior. Like, he's a handful to handle on the interior. There's no doubt about it, man. Herbert said, I agree how the Eagles see it that way. But I agree with you to put him at, 5-tech defensive end. Also, I thought they should have put Avery back at defensive end. That's funny, Caleb. Caleb said, I'm going to have to watch more, but for somebody his size to twitch like him, I love it. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely athletic. I mean, there's a couple guys in here that's interesting, and that's what I said. I really like George Karlaftis a lot, too. I mean, all of these guys give you versatility. It's just a matter of the way the Eagles would use them. I mean, like you guys said, I don't disagree with his hands in the dirt. Jermaine Johnson's a little slow off the snap. I think that there are some things that cannot be denied. It's clear on the film. I do wonder, though, about like the underlying athleticism of a player like that. If you were to put him alongside of, Josh Sweat, and then you got a veteran like Brandon Graham with that inside-outside versatility, outside-inside versatility, my bad, guys. Milton Williams with the inside-outside versatility. There's many ways of doing it. Karlaftis is kind of very similar, in my opinion, to Brandon Graham in terms of the way that he plays the game. Very good with his hand placement, a very good technician. I'm not too sure their frames are exactly the same, but I'm not too sure Brandon Graham moves the same way. He's violent. He's very violent with his hands, but I'd have to really see Brandon Graham at this stage of his career and judge that against a very young Karlaftis, to be fair, and see actually how they shoot off the line. Nicholas said, which prospects are good at stunting since we do well when we stunt up front? I think when I look at stunning, Ted, I like to look at it from who has the underlying athleticism to win if you stunt them. And, for me, I do think that Jermaine Johnson was used a lot on stunts. I think the underlying athleticism is there for him to be devastating off a stunt, but it wasn't there on the film. Like, he didn't always produce off the stunt per se. He's an interesting guy. He's an interesting prospect in that role because there's definitely some development that has to occur there. But I definitely think he's a dude you would stunt. I would say that, Ojabo, you take a guy that has the underlying athleticism, you stun him. I think he could be particularly, damaging to you. Sam Williams, another guy, crazy. He bends the edge so well that maybe they don't really want to use him too much on stunts just because of what he can do bending that edge. But I think he's got the underlying athleticism to be really good off of something like that. And then you got the other side of it. You got TT stunts, right? You look at guys that give you that inside pass rush ability, right? So, think like, what George Karlaftis could do, what, Leal could do. And those guys that could give you that TT stunt ability or TE stunt, There's a lot of different ways of doing it. I said TT. Yeah, there we go. So I was trying to make sure I said that correctly, guys. Caleb said there's plenty of defensive talent in this draft. He said dang near to round 3 for real. Plenty of ball players. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that they could be I think they should be patient there. Antonio said, for some reason, Gate, I'm not sold on Karlaftis. Vincent said, I like the idea of the Eagles trading up with the Panthers for Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton he's a playmaker, man. That dude's a really good safety. Yeah, there's not a lot of guys that come in the draft that have that kind of upper tier talent level, at that position that often. I mean, I don't hate that. I definitely think you can pluck a safety in the second round too, but yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the problem is like, I don't think we're going to be able to climb high enough, to get an Aiden Hutchinson or Thibodeau. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau would have to fall so far in the draft for us to even be in range. I just can't see us moving from 15. Let's be real. You're going to have to package 15 and 16 and other picks. Going from there all the way into the top 5, it seems very unlikely to me. I have no idea what's combine in football. Maybe live stream tomorrow or explain. I only know combine from Half-Life series. The NFL scouting combine. It's they do it every year around March. Well, it's not around March. It's in March. It's where they do they do a lot of field drills. You'll see some athletic testing profile stuff there, where you see the 40-yard dash and all that kind of stuff, the broad jump, all that kind of stuff. Boye Mafe had a great Senior Bowl and got to the quarterback at will. He looked way more athletic than I thought. Yeah, I mean, look, he's another guy that, second, third round value. Edge rusher from Minnesota. I think it kind of goes to Caleb's point, which is this draft is pretty deep in defense. You can definitely pluck a guy in the second or third round that might turn out to be better overall than some of these guys that are rated in the first round. Caleb said Kyle Hamilton is a problem. Unpopular opinion, A Key is 2-3. Kayvon T for Oregon is like my 4th or 5th defensive end in this draft. So why do you have Thibodeau down so far, Jalen? I mean, look, I haven't watched enough of Thibodeau's, film to come in that strong on it. Ebiketie's pretty good, man. That's why I was asking you what you thought about him, because when I went to go watch Ebiketie's film, I thought Ebiketie was a lot better than people are realizing. I thought Ebiketie is a guy that, the way we make the argument for Jermaine Johnson to be there maybe at 19-20, I think you make the same case for Ebiketie. I think you can make that same exact case. That, yeah, is it a bit of an overdraft? Probably. But, if you can't trade back and you need an edge rusher, I don't hate Ebiketie at 19. Brian said a lot of people don't know that Jermaine Johnson had to go to a last chance U school because of his grades, and his improvement every year is staggering. Canadian Football Convoy, NFC's B, said, rumors out of Senior Bowl is the Lions want Hamilton. May try to trade back with the Jets, as the Jets want one of those two edges. You're talking about Kyle Hamilton? That's interesting, guys. That's interesting. NFC's beast, I don't know. When it comes to this time of the year, it's hard to say what teams are going to do. But yeah, man, I mean, definitely. Drake Jackson from USC. I'm skeptical of Pac-12 pass rushers, man. I've just been burnt too many times, Vincent, from the Pac-12 pass rushers. And I get you should never scout a helmet or a conference, but it's just every time I end up liking a guy from the Pac-12, it doesn't work out, man. I mean, Marlon Tuipulotu burnt me last year from USC. He was a teammate of Drake Jackson. I mean, Drake Jackson had an incredible rise from 2020 to 2021 in the level of production he put up. He's hard to grade because he didn't have as many snaps as some of the other guys. He had a 9.5 PRP rating, so pass rush percentage. 17 hurries, 3 hits, 6 sacks, and 26 defensive pressures overall, but he played less snaps. So that's why I like to use the PRP rate, because the rate gives you, something that you can kind of play off of a little bit in terms of where to rank some of these guys. Vincent said the second best safety, in my opinion, is Daxton Hill. He reminds me of Earl Thomas, and I heard he can run a 4.2 range. I like Daxton Hill a lot. Is he a nickel though? Here's my thing, Vincent. Is he purely a safety, or is that a nickel cornerback? That's the only issue I have with Daxton Hill. Dude's a good coverage guy though, man. He's going to be a really good coverage guy, whether it's in the nickel or over the top as a safety. I think he's going to definitely be one. Jalen said AK isn't an overdraft. That's a legit first-round pick, defensive end. He isn't as physical as I'd like, but AK can play ball and get to the quarterback like the best of them. Just watch the Auburn game. Yeah, I mean, he definitely flashes on film. There's no doubt about it. Sorry, guys. It's like jumping on me a little bit here. Could be all smoke and silly season. Safety to Lions like Howie with his binoculars. What's up, handsome hitter? Unique screen name, my guy. He said, would you move up for Stingley if he slips to 10? I still think Stingley's a good player. The injuries concern me, if I'm being honest, hitter. The injuries are a little bit of a concern there because it definitely affected his production. But look, if you just break down what the guy can be in terms of what he is as a player, in the trail position with the ball in the air on vertical concepts, 7, 8, 9 routes, he'll take the football away from you. We saw that his freshman year. Problem is, after his freshman year, I don't think he had an interception again. He just dealt with so many injuries that kind of limited his production. I probably would want to see him move down the board a little more than 10, honestly, just because of what it would cost us to get from 15 to 10. I still think would be quite expensive. But I don't, I'm not going to be mad if the Eagles did that. But if he's there at 12, I think that's where I would really kind of spike my interest at 12 to want to get to that player. Herbert said if AK is available at pick 19, you got to take him. Caleb said there's really no reason why we can't get a linebacker, a defensive end, a corner, and even an outside linebacker or safety. We can fill all those needs with studs in the first 2 days. I just pray we can get Devin Lloyd. Kayvon isn't physical, and he looks to duck contact. I also question his motor. That's interesting. I mean, he was a really highly productive player, although, I mean, his freshman year, Jalen was, like, phenomenal. I don't think he's ever really repeated the production he had his freshman year. I still think he was quite productive for Oregon. I mean, I don't know about the motor, Jalen. I'll be honest. I haven't really charted his snaps like that to really say, like, oh, like, it seems like he's, the percentage of plays here. It'd be hard for me to say that off the cuff like this. But, I mean, it's interesting. I'll definitely keep it in mind when I look him over like that. He said, if we can get AK and Leal, sheesh. Yeah, that would be, first, second round valuation there, man. You talk about putting together a good pass rush. Yeah, absolutely, man. He said, Caleb said, I wouldn't move up for a corner. I feel like we can get Elam, Sauce, or Stingley. We just need one of them. We can get that in the first round, I think. If you just stay still, you probably could. Well, I mean, the good news is that if all three of those corners go, somebody in the pass rush department is sliding down the board. You know what I mean? Like, if all three of those corners are off the board by pick 15, that means the pass rush has been slid down. Matt Hatter said, I don't want any more injured players. You're on the Ojabo or bus train? Ojabo? Elam is a dog. I liked Elam a lot, and Elam was very productive going back to his freshman season. I mean, Elam, everyone talks about how well Stingley played, and to be fair, Stingley was lights out his freshman year. But Elam was pretty dang good that same year, man. He was a really good football player that year. NFC Speed said, I don't really want to take any of these linebackers before 25. Move back to early mid-second, and there are 3 or 4 of the top 5 linebackers. See, that's my question is what happens between the linebackers and the defensive ends? Might there be a faster run on the linebackers because there's decent depth at linebacker? I do think this is a pretty good linebacker draft class, but I don't think the linebacker core goes quite as deep as the defensive end core. It's going to be interesting to see which one gets the run first. Who has the run first? Because, the Eagles are in a pretty good position between the second and third round to kind of play off of where the runs happen. He said, what's your take on Jalen Pitre in the second if we don't go defensive back in round 1? I think the second round might be a little high for Pitre, but I love the player. He's definitely one of these guys that played pretty much what's called the star role. He came in as a linebacker early on, then converted kind of out to safety. He's got a lot of versatility. I think that guy would be a really good strong safety. I don't hate that as a third-round pick, even if you had to move up in the third round. And I know a lot of you guys like Gabe, there's a lot of guys in terms of defensive ends, and you probably don't need to move up. We can kind of probably play the value game, and I get it. But I do think Petrie could help you solve some issues that you have, not only for 2022, but the long-term future questions. Herbert said if Stingley falls in the draft, it's due to injuries. He's a top 5 talent. If he's at pick 15, it's a steal. Yeah, I don't think he's, Herbert, I don't anticipate he'll be there at pick 15. That's why I said if he's there at like pick 12, I might have to consider what it would cost me to get from pick 15 to 12. Caleb said, Steve, you think Devin Lloyd is gone at 15? To the Eagles? Sure, I'll take it. Do you think he's gone by pick 15? That's a great question. I think there's a chance he's still on the board, Caleb. I do. I know that Michael Parsons is probably going to start the clock on some guys at the linebacker position. But to be fair, Haason Reddick has done a lot from that stand-up position as a linebacker too. And I know it's a little different. I know that Parsons played some natural defensive end for Dallas at times last season. Haason Reddick has done that a handful of times too. They both kind of can play the mic or the outside. I don't know, man. Like I would think that if we're looking at it from that perspective, Nakobe Dean is probably the more gifted pass rusher. Maybe Nakobe Dean's gone by 15. I do think there's a possibility Devin Lloyd is still on the board at 15. Have you done the draft simulator yet? Need playmakers, not decent players? I think you need both. But because to be fair, Ted, you're only going to get playmakers to a certain valuation in the draft. And then you kind of have to play off of who are going to be decent players that maybe have some upside to them. Would you gamble on a running back or a tight end in the third? If so, who do you like? Not necessarily the third, but the 4th and 5th round at both of those positions. Handsome hitter. There's some talent at tight end in this draft. There's some talent. I'll give you a name that hasn't really been mentioned in terms of the Senior Bowl and stuff like that, because there's some names that have popped up. Kohler, Kooler, the dude from Iowa State. Big guy, 6'5", 6'6", 260-ish. Look, he's playing with Tom Manning, who has familiarity going back to the Indianapolis Colts. So he's got familiarity with Nick Sirianni. He's got familiarity with Kevin Patullo. Manning coached with those guys. That system, it ain't so far-fetched from what Michaels is running here with our tight ends as our tight end coach, and then what Sirianni, Steichen, and Patullo got designed up here. I like him a lot, man. In terms of running backs, ooh, that's a tough one, man. 4th or 5th round evaluations, that's where I said. Jerome Ford is interesting to me. There's a few guys. There's a few guys at running back I think that stand out. Don't think we're drafting a linebacker in the first. I think it's possible Mad Hatter just because of the scheme situation. I mean, if Gannon goes to him and says, like, the scheme is not going to survive without Lloyd or, without, Nakobe Dean, I think if you're Howie, you don't really have a choice. It's just a matter if that's a truthful statement. You know what I mean? But I suspect your hunch is right that they'll probably look defensive end before they look anywhere else. I kind of get that feeling too. Defensive draft deeper. If we need a linebacker, I take one with 3 picks. Devin Lloyd's my guy. He'd fit in Gannon's coverage scheme. Jalen said Stingley confuses me. Some tape he looks like a monster, and then others is he plays back, wait and see, and he misses. But I don't know what year of tape the games were from. Show Enough said, Gate City, what do you think about Ali Gay from LSU? His technique could use some work, but he has good vision in the backfield and goes for turnovers. Solid late round pick. Yeah, he's a guy that I've heard a few people mention recently. I got to break down more of his film, Show Enough, because I just haven't watched enough to really get a feel for where his value should be. But you're on to something, because all of a sudden there's some rumblings coming out from the scouting community that he's rising on people's boards. Dang said a running back in the 4th round would be good. James Cook is a guy I like. Brian Robinson would be awesome too. Yeah, from Alabama. I think he's a really good player. Dank said, I think they'll draft a linebacker. We have to stop being so pessimistic. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not going to rule it out, but yeah, I mean, hopefully they break the trend, Dank. Showing up said tight end Will Mallory from the U looks solid. Goddard-like player that goes for yak. Was he the one that they didn't really utilize too much in the passing game, and then he kind of came out to the Senior Bowl showing up and started kind of popping off as a receiving target? I don't know if that's who I was thinking, but yeah. Akam said he thinks Bryce Hall would be a good fit for Philly. Caleb said, unpopular opinion, I might go Lloyd over Dean. I know it sounds crazy, but I really like Lloyd, man. So here's the only thing I have with Lloyd, the issue I have with him. If you look at the scheme, and tell me what you think, Caleb, and everybody in the comment section. If you look at the scheme, if you're going to play Lloyd at the Sam, how often are we going to have the Sam linebacker on the field? Is it something that's worth spending that kind of draft capital for? Now, if you play him as the Will, see that here, and you know what? Now I really think about it. It depends, right? Because if you play him as a Sam, then you got TJ Edwards out on the field. You got Devin Lloyd. You got Davion Taylor in a perfect world. And then you keep Davion as your Will, and you keep, Devin Lloyd as your Sam and your nickel concepts. Honestly, Caleb, I kind of answered my own question as I was hashing it out in my head. I think you probably pull TJ Edwards. Yeah. I guess I can see that, man. Weak draft class at the top, deep draft class, second, third, and fourth rounds. I'd like to see the Eagles trade back to the second with a couple of picks and try to get a couple of extra first next year. Yeah, it would be nice to capitalize upon that NFC East beast. I agree. But, like we all said, man, it takes two in terms of that. What's your take on Tariq Woolen? I haven't really watched any film, man. Let me, I'll write them down for you, Tariq Woolen, and then I'll do a film study for you guys. I'm doing independent breakdown, so we'll have the player profiles. I've already started by running some Senior Bowl film, but yeah, man, I'll let you know as I come across them. Showing up said he's not really sure on that one. Yeah, there was a guy they were talking about showing up. I don't know if it's him or not, but they were saying that about him. I'm not sure if it's the guy from the U, but Lloyd would have to be a Mike. Dank said Jermaine Johnson wears number 11. Mekhi Parsons wears number 11. Get him. Laugh out loud. You pull Edwards if you take Lloyd. You figured it out. Laugh out loud. Jalen said, I'm right there with you, Lloyd, real. He basically does it all. Yeah, I think you need an impact linebacker. We had this conversation, but let me ask you guys this. I'm not talking about where you draft them, Jalen and Caleb, Herbert, Dank, Shonuff, handsome hitter, NFC's beast. There's a bunch of y'all in here. Occam. Who else is in here, man? My guy Mad Hatter, Ted's in here. Let me ask you guys a question. I'm not talking about the draft value, but what's the more important thing to get right? Safety or linebacker? What do you think is the most important thing to get right for this scheme, safety or linebacker? I'm really concerned about what our safeties look like. I like Marcus Epps. I do. I guess you can make an argument that, you can pluck a safety out of free agency. There's going to be a few guys that'll be available that'll be upgrades. But I'm just wondering. I'm curious what you guys think. What's your take on that, man? Like, safety or linebacker? What's the more important one for the scheme? Would you take a chance on Jameson Williams? I like Jameson Williams. Handsome man. I like him a lot. Occam said Christian Harris in the second to pair with Edwards and Singleton. Caleb said Lloyd averaged 7 sacks a year for 3 years. It's pretty good production, man. Lloyd fits again in scheme better. He had 2 in 5 games. COVID year, laugh out loud. He's tough now. Safety. Jalen said safety. Handsome hitter said safety. Allie. Sorry, Allie. I didn't know you were still in the chat. Allie said safety. Occam said safety. Ugh. NFC's B said, Woolen I had as a sleeper. I'm betting he's now a late day 2, early day 3. So you think like 3rd or 4th round pick, NFC's Beast? What's up, Irish Steve? How you doing, buddy? He said, with 3 picks in the first and with so many needs, this is probably the most exciting draft since I've been an Eagle fan. And a first started as an Eagle fan back in 1978. You got me beat, Irish Steve. I was born in 83, so you definitely got me beat, man, my guy. You go back a little further than me. So you remember Jerry Robinson being selected. My guy, Irish Steve, goes all the way back to Jerry Robinson's draft. The last time we took a linebacker in the first round. Dante said, I want at least one speed rusher, athletic type, a sweat type player, a free agent, safety, and wide receiver from Caleb. One above all said linebacker, but that's a really good question. Caleb said veteran leadership at both free agent, safety, and wide receiver. Linebacker that covers those dang tight ends that scored on us. I hear you, Ted. We did have a problem with tight ends this year, man. It was weird because it seems like the bigger name tight ends we kind of fared well against. But then like the lesser name guys that were good, but maybe not household names yet, kind of got taken to school a little bit by some of those dudes. Canadian Freedom NFC's B said a safety linebacker and often out of the play, opposite side of the field. Convoy, I agree. Safety, we need a special athlete on the back end. Drew said, I think both are important for the scheme, to be honest, but man, a playmaking safety would be nice. Bobby said, with Harris and McLeod being free agents, I'd say safety. Handsome Hitter said, reason being safety is so interchangeable and you need that piece to move around in this scheme. Dank said, I think linebacker, they need that guy that's a sideline-to-sideline player who can close in and shut down an offense. Someone you got to label the mic every time. In the modern NFL, linebackers are basically safeties. To an extent, I agree, but not, they're hook defenders. But Herbert Saunders said, we're weak at safety. I'm still taking Devin Lloyd, though. Get safety in free agency. Occam said, if you want a safety who can cover and tackle, maybe in the 3rd, Jalon Foster. He is only 5'11", 200 pounds. He hasn't come across my radar yet. Jalon Foster. Interesting. From South Carolina. He said, Shonuff said, Taylor Britt out in Nebraska looks like he can play both cornerback and safety. We haven't been right since Malcolm. That's true, Shonuff. That's very true. El Hefe with Israel C said, Woolen likes to lay the wood. The kid likes to hit. But watching his highlights, he doesn't turn around for the ball. And he got beat too many times. Dante said, we need more speed at linebacker and safety to close windows in the zones Gannon wants to run. Caleb said, I played against Jalon Foster in high school. That's funny, Caleb. That's funny, man, that you played against Jalon Foster. That's pretty cool, man. Handsome Hitter said, Smoke Monday would be a nice fit. That's interesting. Yeah, Caleb, you were telling me you played with a lot of guys, coming out of South Carolina that went on to play in the NFL, man. It's pretty interesting, man. You had an opportunity to play with a lot of really good football players. All right, guys, we're coming up on an hour and 44 minutes. I'll hang in here for a couple more minutes, but I'm about to jump off, guys, because I still got some stuff I got to do in terms of breaking down some film and some stuff like that, guys. He said, for sure, blessed. Yeah, man, you had an impressive list of guys that you played against, man. There's no doubt about it, man. Caleb, weren't you the one that's saying that you had an opportunity to see Deebo Samuel play? Duncan, South Carolina. It's kind of crazy because South Carolina does produce some pretty good players. It really does, and it's not the biggest state in terms of population. Just, yeah, it's crazy. Caleb said, I played with Deebo. That's pretty cool, man. That's crazy, dude. Yeah, that's crazy that you played with Deebo Samuel, man. It's really cool. I appreciate that, Herbert. Thank you, buddy. You have a good day too, man. All right, guys. Let me get Drew real quick. Thoughts on Brisker from Penn State. I like him a lot. Great instincts to the ball, and he can cover. Really, really, really good coverage guy, man. Yeah, he's a really good coverage guy, Drew. I don't, like I said, I would probably have him as my second or third safety on the board. I like Brisker a lot, but I do think there's some arguments that can be had there. I think Daxton Hill's the guy where it depends if you have him as a nickel or do you have him as a safety. But I think Brisker and Daxton Hill are really good football players. I was really shocked at how good Brisker was in coverage, man. Caleb said, yeah, I played with him in a little league, and we're from the same city. He said Debo and JJ were high school rivals, I thought. That's interesting. Just finished simulator. Number 16, Gardner. Number 18, Lloyd. Number 19, Hill. 48, Cameron Thomas. Number 51, Zion Johnson. I like the way you work the board and trade it back. I wouldn't hate those type of players, guys. I mean, you got Ahmad Garner and Devin Lloyd, so linebacker and corner. You got Daxton Hill next, which, you know, I guess you're projecting him, Ted, as a safety. And then you got Cameron Thomas, so you got an edge rusher. And then Zion Johnson, a guard, center type. It's not a bad one, man. Smoke Monday is good. Great size at 6'3". Now I have to watch some of these guys later from Beach and Beer. Turner from Nevada is my dude. Tall guy, former wide receiver, got converted to a tight end. Love Brisker, second best safety in this draft. Caleb said I played with JJ. JJ Arthega-Whiteside, huh? Hey, man. That's pretty cool, man. You know, you definitely played with a lot of top-end talented guys, Caleb, man. Think about McKinney, Oregon shut down Ohio State wide receivers. Love the show. Hey, no problem, Caleb. I appreciate you guys coming in. Occam said, Caleb, are you in South Carolina? Me too, Chapin. Yeah, he is. It's kind of interesting, man, about how many Eagle fans there actually are in the Carolinas, between North Carolina and South Carolina. Just in this chat room alone, we got Caleb and we got Occam in South Carolina. Then you got NFC East Beast and myself in North Carolina. It's definitely interesting. Lone Wolf said, I would be happy if we get Daxton Hill and Brisker. I definitely would go 4 straight defensive picks. I'm good. Sauce and Lloyd, fresh off the board. Caleb said he's in South Carolina. Hardly Debo High School in the same county, but different divisions. Roebuck, South Carolina here. See, another. What's up, Swisher? How you doing, man? Harold Lombis was a lineman in Chapin. Okay, I'm not familiar with them, Caleb. I'm really not. But I know you were directing that towards Occam because that's where he's from. That's interesting. Now we got, there's like 5 or 6 of us here between North and South Carolina. It's interesting. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all. It's an hour and 48 minutes, guys. I'm going to try to do some stuff this weekend. We'll try to do a live stream either Friday night or Saturday night, guys. We'll see how I structure it. But we'll definitely do kind of a weekend live stream, guys. So that way we can get kind of prepped for the Super Bowl. Obviously, we're probably not going to do too much content on Sunday because, Super Bowl. But, yeah, guys, I appreciate y'all, man. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Bye, Blaze Tail. I appreciate you, buddy.